Okay, to finish off, the mitzvah kibbud av aim. I mean, you could learn a lot about it. Okay, we learned that you have to honor your in-laws, you have to honor your step-parents, you have to honor your older brothers, according to certain opinions, older sisters too. You have to honor... Okay, now what happens if your mother-in-law tells you one thing and your grandfather tells you to do something else? Do you listen to your mother-in-law or father-in-law or to your grandparents? So Mincha Lazar, the Munkatcher, questions it, and he comes to the conclusion, probably you have to listen to your grandfather first. Whatever. Okay, not only that, but halachos is brought down, you should honor all the relatives of your father and mother. I mean, their uncles and aunts, all these people halachically should be honored and respected and so on. Okay, now he says like this, if you really want to honor your parents, how do you really honor your parents? By being a good Jew, meaning learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, that people should come along and say, wow, look at, like it says by Rabbi Yeshua, Ashra Yoladatoi. Fortune is the one that gave birth to him. So a person can make a good Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying the names of the parents and everything, by being a mensch that everybody should say, oh, look at his parents, the way they raised such a nice Jewish boy. The same thing, if a father wants to have pity on his kids, he should learn Torah, do good deeds, he should be nice, he should honor his children. That's what it says in the book. You should honor your children. But if you don't go on the straight path, then your kids don't go on the straight path, and so on and so forth. Okay, now another interesting din, this is the last din in Kitzur about this dinim. A convert, according to halacha, a ger shenizgayer, a convert who converts is a newborn baby. According to actual halacha, and I have to finish the point, but according to actual halacha, if a child converts, they're not their child anymore, they're not related to them, they have nothing to do with them, halachically, it's just a different person. According to technical Torah law, if a brother and a sister, two goyim, a brother and a sister, both convert, so because they're totally unrelated to each other, technically they're allowed to get married to each other. Halacha, not only that, according to halacha, if a mother and a son convert, halachically they would allow them to marry each other. But, halacha says, practically speaking, you're not allowed to. Why you're not allowed to? That people shouldn't say, look at this. As non-Jews, the brother couldn't marry the sister. The son cannot marry the mother. And all of a sudden, as Jews, they would be allowed to. So therefore, the halacha is practically speaking, they can't. But we had mentioned this in the past. We once had a very interesting shaila here in the city. Is there a din of yichud, of being alone? You know, male and female cannot be alone in a room. Brothers and sisters could, and parents and children and that. But that technically you can't be in a room for an extended period of time, right? It's a din of yichud. So there was a case we had once. This non-Jewish guy was married to a Jewish woman. And they were they were religious. You know, everything. But he wasn't Jewish. And then he converted. After he converted, the wife decided not to stay married to him. Not to stay married to him anymore. She didn't want him after he converted. But they had a daughter. So now the question, when it came to custody, can the father have the daughter over for a weekend? Because in the fact that he converted, so it's not his daughter anymore halachically, because he's a newborn baby, right? He's a new creature. All his previous relatives don't exist. So the question is, would he be allowed to have his biological daughter, who's not his halachic daughter anymore, to be alone with him over the weekend and for custody? So it's a very interesting halacha, the poskim write, that because it's a biological father, there's no problem of yichud. Even though if technically they're not related, according to halacha, it would be a problem, But because it's the biological father, there's no problem of yichud, and that's the halacha taka. In Hilchos said that wouldn't be a problem. But not only that, a guy who converts, the guy who converts, and now, as far as treating his parents, he has to treat his parents nicely. Even though again halachically they're not really his parents, but you have to be nice to them and treat them nicely and respectful. That people shouldn't say, "Oh, look at this guy. He became Jewish, and all of a sudden he dumps his parents." Okay, next thing in Kitzur is the dinam of respecting your Rebbe, old people, scholars, and a kohen. Okay, all these people halachically demand respect. So the thing is, you have to respect your rabbi, your Rebbe, and you have to fear him even more than the father. More than the father. Why? Because the father brings you into this world, and your Rebbe brings you into Olam Haba, which is eternal. This world is temporary, and the father, so the parents, the biological parents, bring you into this world, which is temporary, and your Rebbe brings you into the world to come. But halacha says clearly that if your father is also your Rebbe, means he also teaches you, then obviously that comes even before the Rebbe.
What if he's also a scholar but he doesn't teach?
If he's a scholar and he doesn't teach his kids, he shouldn't be a parent.
He teaches a lot of things, but he doesn't teach.
Like 2 minutes ago about a non-Jewish woman marrying a religious guy.
It happened.
An Orthodox guy?
Well, he was a guy.
Huh?
He was a guy.
I'll talk to you about it later.
Okay, good.
I don't talk.
What? If a father is a scholar and he doesn't teach his kids, there's something wrong.
Fathers teach their kids all the time.
Okay? More talking, he teaches them Torah, learns with them, teaches them Torah. But that's... Okay. Okay, next. It says in the pasuk, "Mipnei seva takum v'adarta pnei zaken." For an old person, you should get up and you should respect the face of a zaken. So zaken, what does a zaken mean? What's the definition of a zaken? As the Gemara says, zaken stands for zeh shekana chachma. It refers to a scholar. Okay? So over there, zeh shekana. What should you acquire?
What is the chet?
There's no ches there.
Zaken nun.
I understand. But it says that zaken is, as Chacham say, zeh shekana, and what are you acquiring? Chachma. He acquired chachma. We also mentioned, by the way, why is a Talmud Chacham called a Talmud Chacham? Should be called a Chacham. Why is he called Talmud Chacham? Because a real scholar is all he feels that he needs to learn more. If he thinks he knows it all, he's no good. Like the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, "Ezel Chacham halemid mikol adam." A real Chacham is one that knows that there's so much more to learn. And by the way, as we mentioned many times, it's interesting. The more you learn, the more you realize the less you know.
Hurts you more.
There was an interesting story. Rabbi Manus Friedman once told the story. He was once speaking somewhere for a group. And after he finished speaking the group, he says to his, this lady comes over to him and she says to him, "I don't know what to do. My son wants to marry a shiksa. Maybe he could..." So, and here he is. And she dumps the son right in front of him. So he said to the son, he said the Eibishter gave him what to say. So he said to the son, "So let me ask you a question. So if you're marrying into a non-Jewish family, they're going to consider you the scholar of the Jewish religion." He says, "Are you acquainted with Jewish knowledge?" He says, "What's there to learn already? What's there to learn already in Judaism? There's not too much to learn." So he said to him, yeah, there's 24 books of scriptures, the 63 tractates of Talmud, there's an infinite amount of books, and this and that. He told him, there's plenty. He said, I would suggest, in order not to get embarrassed, because any question in Judaism, they're going to ask you, I think you should go away to study for a few months, a half a year, should go study in a yeshiva before you marry the shiksa, that you should just be able to know how to answer questions that they're going to ask. He said, I think it's a good idea. And long story short, he went to yeshiva, became a Baal Tshuva, he dumped the shiksa, and he married a fine Jewish girl. So, in Yiddishkeit, the more you learn, the more you realize, the less you know. And therefore, scholars always call the Talmud Chacham, because he always feels like he's a student, there's so much more to know. Okay, so therefore like this, before an old person, even if he's an illiterate, as long as he's not a Rasha, a person who is 70, because the Torah says Seva. How much is Seva? The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, 60 is Zikna, and 70 is Seva. So when the Torah says, Mepnei Seva Takum, you have to stand up in the presence of an old man. So the Torah says, basically, according to Shulchan Aruch, if there's a guy 70 or older walks into the room, halachically you have to stand up, out of respect to the old man, as long as he's not a real big sinner. But even if he's not a scholar, you still have to stand up.
A goy too, no?
And it says even a goy, a filo goy, zakin goy, even an old goy, you give him respect. You give him a hand to help him. You treat him respectfully. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yechanan, they asked him a man after Yomim, why did you live so long? One of the things the Gemara in Brachos says, why did he live long? He said, nobody ever said good morning to him first. That no person said to me shalom first. He said, afilu akum shebeshuk. Even the goy in the market, he said, there was never a human being that said hello to me before I said it to them. That, the respect, even older person, you have to give respect. And there's bachal a proper thing to do. Give respect to everybody. Okay, next. Now, the question is, Apidin, by the way, even if you see a Talmid Chacham walking, even through a glass window, halachically you're supposed to stand up. That's the halacha. You have to, even though you see him only through a glass, it's still considered seeing.
Even if he doesn't see.
Right. Now, what happens though, and this is a sort of thing I mentioned many times in shul. If somebody's sitting and holding a Sefer Torah, they don't stand up for anything. They're holding a Sefer Torah. You don't. Let's say I'll give you an example. There's two Sefer Torahs, right? So the first guy, he did Hagbah, and he's sitting down with the Sefer Torah. Now the second Sefer Torah, they're doing Hagbah. So the din is, when you pick up the Sefer Torah, everybody in shul has to stand, but not the guy holding the Sefer Torah. The guy holding the Sefer Torah, the first Sefer Torah for sure doesn't get up to stand, because he's holding a Sefer Torah. Why should he stand? He doesn't stand for anything. And it says even halacha more interesting. Even, and this shows where the basis of the halacha is. If a parent is blind, God forbid, or the Rebbe is blind, or the old man is blind, which really they don't know the difference if you're standing up or not, the din is you still have to stand up. Why? It's not a din for them. It's a din for you. You, as a person, has to stand up for somebody that's older, wiser, parent, whatever it is. Whether they are aware of it or not, doesn't matter. You have an obligation to stand up for them. It's for you, it's not for them.
When do you not have to stand when the Arna Kodesh is open?
The only time you really have to stand when the Arna Kodesh is open, halachically, is when they take out a Sefer Torah. There's certain parts of davening that the minig is to stand anyway. They have Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu, those things anyway, because the importance of the tefillah is stand up. But we mention always every year, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, just because the Aron Kodesh is open doesn't necessarily mean you have to stand. There are opinions that say the people mamish facing the Sefer Torah, in the but even then, halachically, you don't have to stand when the Sefer Torah is open. Only if the Sefer Torah is taken in or out, or a certain what?
What's considered standing? Just getting
Standing for what?
For like an old person.
It's a very good question. Cheating is getting up a little bit. That's cheating. Properly, you stand up. Technically, and the kids don't do this today, but we discuss in Kibbut Avaim. According to halacha, your father and mother walk into the room, halachically you have to stand up.
Have a question.
What's that? The reason why we don't, all friendly people, they don't always stand up when the parent walks in, because there's an assumption the father and the mother were meichel, they forgave the cover that you don't have to stand up. What?
I came late to pray. The Sefer Torah is open, and they're reading the Sefer Torah, and I have to pray Tfilah Shmoneh. Can I pray Tfilah Shmoneh when Sefer Torah open?
Halacha says you have to wait for the Sefer Torah to finish the Torah reading, because you need to hear the Torah reading.
Let me know.
So you cannot daven the Amidah. Women who are not obligated to listen to Torah reading would be allowed to daven, but not men, because men have to hear Kriya. Huh?
I have to wait.
We have to wait for the Sefer Torah to be finished, and then you don't have the obligation of hearing Kriya Torah anymore, and then you could go daven. Okay, next. When three people are walking in the street, say the Rebbe with two other Chassidim. So the Rebbe walks in the middle, and two a little bit on the side, a little bit behind him. Greater of the student on the right side of the Rebbe, and the lesser student, or the younger student, on the left side of the Rebbe. But ideally they walk a little bit, it says in Shulchan Aruch, they walk a little bit behind him, because he's walking in front and they're walking on the right and left behind him.